Hi, it's Scott, ROCKFILE, back with another podcast review. Let's talk about the very first Hellraiser movie. Had a friend ask me the other day, why did I not change my music for like my Halloween reviews, my October reviews? And I'm like, well, I just really found this music that I really like. I have rotated through music over the years, and this is, I think it fits more of my presentation, if you will. So a couple years ago, Arrow Video put out this box set of Hellraiser movies. It's the first 4 Hellraiser movies, and I'll go into the box set as I get towards the end of these reviews. So between that and what I already own, I own 8 of the Hellraiser movies, I believe. I will have to do a little more research. I think there's been 9 or 10, 9 maybe? Anyway, long story short, this box set is something I really wanted, and not too long ago it went on sale for the first time since it came out in 2023. The discs have been corrected, whatever was wrong with them. It was an audio or a video thing. I don't really remember. Wasn't paying attention. I just knew to stay away from it until Arrow corrected it, because they're always very good about that. The box set is uber impressive. I would have honestly paid more than I did, but it was the first time I'd seen it that low, and I pulled the trigger on it. It was on one of my boutique stores, I believe, Diabolic DVD. They had it on sale a few months ago, and it's been sitting on the shelf kind of waiting for October, because I've seen all the movies and revisit them for these reviews. So anyway, we're here to talk about the very first Hellraiser from 1987. For a modern movie to be considered a hit, it needs to make 3 times its budget. It's why these days a $15 to $20 million budgeted film, most of them are considered successes because it's not really hard to make up to $100 million if it's a really good movie. Obviously, the superhero movies, now we're getting in the budgets of $200 million. They have to gross $600 million to gross any kind of profit. So this movie in 1987 was made for $1 million, and it went on to gross $30 million. You want to know how to start a franchise? Do that. Make 30 times your budget back in the cinemas, which at the time, ticket prices were a lot lower than they are today. That wasn't an easy thing to do. It was written and directed by Clive Barker, based on his short story, The Hellbound Heart. I think of the movies he directed, and he only directed a few. This is his best one. He had much bigger things to do. This was a much more grounded story, didn't require as many special effects or world building. It's just a solid flick. The new 4K edition available from Arrow is spectacular. I have their original Blu-ray edition. I will do some A/B comparisons when I do an overall box set review, but needless to say, this 4 movie box set of the Hellraiser movies is worth picking up if you care about video quality. Amazing. And some of the audio has been upgraded, or at least is on par with the previous Arrow releases. There's a lot of extras, and the packaging is really cool. There's been a couple of them. I got the pinhead packaging. I was thinking about this before I recorded. This classic movie starring Andrew Robinson, Claire Higgins, and Ashley Lawrence works because you have an innocent person pulled into a world where bad people are doing bad things and getting their comeuppance. It's a reason why the John Wick movies work. The violence, of which there is plenty, is usually perpetrated on people who are very bad, and they deserve, quote unquote, in the mythology of the movies, to get their comeuppance somehow, some way, some horrible way. The Cenobites only come if you call them. The demons in the Hellraiser movies, you have to be messing with things you probably shouldn't be messing with to get them to pop into your life. But Kirsty, the character played by Ashley Lawrence, is an innocent. Different from the slasher movies of the time where, 2 innocent kids could just be making out or having sex in a Friday the 13th movie and they're going to get skewered just because, well, they were being bad at the time. But no, in the Hellraiser movies, the bad people who get really horrible things done to them are typically really bad people. There's some infidelity going on here. There is some dark magic kind of worship stuff going on. The movie opens, and it's very low budget, but boy, does he do a lot with it. It's hard to believe he only had that amount of money. But he wrote the original story. This was his creative vision, his first movie. He had maybe movies made like Rawhead Rex, but if you watch that, it pales in comparison to something like Hellraiser. I love the first 2 Hellraisers. I'm not a fan of 3 and 4. 5, 6, 7, 8 are also not I think 4 was the last one that got a theatrical release, and straight-to-video stuff doesn't pair well. But some really good people worked on those 4 movies, like Scott Derrickson, director, got his start. And to see him on some of the extras talking about horror movies back in the 80s before we really knew him as the director of some great horror movies like Sinister and big movies like Doctor Strange. There's a lot to be had in Hellraiser if you're a horror fan. If you've never seen it, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but 1987, folks, you should have seen it by now. The story of a family, don't really specify where this is, we assume it is, moves into a house. The stepmother has had a previous relationship with the husband's brother. The brother shows back up in some gnarly ways. And eventually the Cenobites and the demons get involved. The movie works because we care or despise the characters. It's not about the kills. The kills that happen are like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened to that character, which after the second movie, they kind of forget about. It becomes like a lot of movies like Final Destination or Halloween. They have to get more creative with the kills to keep people interested. But what really makes the first 2 movies work, and especially the first one, is the characterizations. We don't want some people to get eviscerated. We do want some people to get eviscerated. It's pretty black and white, and it works very well in the context of $1 million horror movie that set a standard. Man, I went on a tangent of thought about Clive Barker and Stephen King and John Carpenter and Sam Raimi, how those 4, there have been horror directors, there have been horror writers, but those 4 guys took horror, made it their own, and brought it to a wider audience that had never been brought before. Those kinds of things, from visceral, just disgusting horror films to adding comedy and black humor to some of it. It had been done over like I said, there's always been horror movies. There have always been horror writers, but those 4 guys in that formative time in the late 70s and early 80s did some unique things on their own that brought it to a wider audience. I know my mother would have never read Stephen King books without the first ones being so well regarded literary-wise. It took the literary world by storm that somebody was writing real characters in something like Carrie or even Cujo. But King was good at that. I also got into Dean Koontz and some others, but the 4 names I mentioned, between their movies and their books, they advanced horror more than I think a lot of other people did before them, although they were in the shoes of all those, the Wes Cravens and the Alfred Hitchcocks and the rest of them. So Hellraiser works on many levels, and it holds up today because it is in your face and visceral about these characters and what happens. There are some gnarly practical effects. It set a tone for practical effects. It was ahead of its time, which the second movie doubles down on. The 4K edition is great. It's a grainy film to begin with. It was a low budget $1 million film. But it looks good now. The colors really pop, the bright stuff like the light that blinds them when it comes down the hallway or whatever. Those things, you can tell you're watching it's not just Blu-ray. My TV does a pretty good job at up converting and making 1080p look good, but you really can't touch HDR for making colors look richer, more robust, tighter, more concise. Less banding, less of any stuff that we've had in Blu-ray editions before. This is really the best version of Hellraiser, and what a classic film. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I think as we get farther down the line of all of our art, some things are just not for everybody. There's like Lifetime, I would argue there's some art there, but it's nothing I'm ever going to watch. It's just it's not made for me. It's not my cup of tea. I don't know that I was as big a horror fan as I am now before I saw Hellraiser. That Clive Barker really, and I read Clive Barker's books. I'm a big fan of his novels. I like his movies. This is the best one. So the box set is definitely picking up. It's the only way to get Hellraiser in 4K. You can't get it separately at the moment. And again, if you can find the box set on sale, it's just such a plethora of extras and details. Even watching the third and fourth movies that aren't my favorite were worthy. But Hellraiser 1 gets my highest marks as one of the greatest horror movies of all time because it is its name. It's Hellraiser. It's about hell on earth. Doug Bradley has created an entire career out of playing this one character, Pinhead. There's so much mythology to break down, and there's so many videos about it. And this is such an old movie. I'm not going to get into all of that. But this is a Halloween review, and I don't remember that I've really reviewed Hellraiser before. So it's one of my all-time favorites, and revisiting it now, It's got a quaintness to it because this was filmed by a bunch of people that were really passionate about the project, who didn't have a lot of money, but did it right, did everything right. If they had to use a miniature, if they had to do a prosthetic, if they had to do a puppet, you could laugh at some of the special effects, but take yourself back to 1987 and what had come before. This was groundbreaking stuff at the time. And the tone. Clive Barker nailed it. I wish his other movies were as concise and well-directed as this one. He showed real flourishes of directing acumen, talent, vision. Not that the others don't, but like I said, his next two movies just are much bigger in scope and mythology and required a much more, and they had larger budgets, and with that comes a whole lot of other things. But anyway, as an October release goes, Hellraiser is an annual favorite. I will pull it out anytime somebody says, oh man, I haven't seen it in a while. And the rare person who has never seen it, it's nice to see them shocked. And boy, wait till we get to Hellraiser 2. Really like it. 5 stars. Scott, I'm ROCKFILE. More podcasts are on the way. More horror movies during October and the Halloween celebration. I hope you have a spectacular day. Please like, share, and subscribe. And rock on.